The chamber of the Continuum Assembly was built for patience. It was wide, quiet, and filled with soft light that never changed its color or strength. Time passed differently there, or at least it felt that way to humans. Elias Rook stood at the center platform, his hands resting calmly at his sides, his posture careful but not stiff. He had been trained for moments like this, yet training never truly prepared anyone for standing alone before minds that had existed for thousands of years. The assembly members did not sit. They hovered, folded into shapes that suggested thought rather than bodies. Some appeared as layered light, others as slow-moving patterns, and a few as solid forms that looked carved from dark glass. None of them spoke unless it was necessary. Silence was their preferred language. Elias had been there for 7 hours. He did not show his discomfort. Humans had learned long ago that stillness could be a kind of strength. He focused on his breathing and on the quiet hum beneath the floor, a sound that reminded him faintly of an engine at rest. It helped him stay grounded. The Continuum Assembly had summoned humanity after decades of watching. Humans were not the strongest species, nor the most advanced. They did not live the longest, and their technology was often described as inelegant. Yet again and again, when the Assembly reviewed the history of the galaxy, one pattern stood out. Humans survived situations that should have ended them. They adapted where others froze. They tried ideas that made no sense on paper but worked in reality. Elias was here to explain that, or at least, that was what he believed when he arrived. Across the chamber, a shape shifted slightly. From the movement came a voice, smooth and clear, without direction, as if the sound existed everywhere at once. "Human representative," the voice said, "you have answered all requested inquiries." Elias inclined his head. "Yes." "There remains a discrepancy," the voice continued. "Your cognitive activity suggests withheld information." Elias felt his chest tighten just a little. He had expected this. The assembly did not miss details. He had rehearsed answers for every known question. Still, this was different. "I have shared everything relevant," he said carefully. Another presence moved closer. This one was distinct. It took a more defined form, tall and narrow, like a figure made of pale silver lines. This was Selene, the archivist. She was not the leader, but she was the listener. Where others judged, she observed. "You believe that statement to be true," Selene said, "yet your neural patterns indicate repeated suppression of a single concept." Elias met the space where her eyes would have been. "Some thoughts are not ready to be spoken." "Explain," Selene said. He hesitated. The word hesitation itself was a human idea. The assembly knew delay but not doubt in the same way. Elias searched for language that would not mislead. "In human culture," he said, "we sometimes hold back ideas not because they are wrong, but because we fear how they will be received." The chamber grew even quieter. Elias had the sense that many minds were focusing on him at once. "Fear is an inefficient filter," another voice said. "Incorrect ideas are discarded through evaluation." "Yes," Elias agreed, "but some ideas only survive if they are allowed to exist first." Selene moved closer. The light around her form shifted, becoming softer. "You are describing a process not found in continuum models." Elias allowed himself a small breath. "That doesn't surprise me." Hours earlier, when he first stepped onto the platform, he had felt confident. Humanity had prepared well. They had data, examples, carefully chosen stories of cooperation and growth. What they had not prepared was how to explain the part of themselves that even humans struggled to define. The assembly valued clarity. Humans thrived in uncertainty. Selene studied him in silence. Elias wondered if she understood how loud silence could feel to someone who grew up among constant noise. "You are thinking again," she said at last. "The same concept." Elias smiled faintly. "It's a habit." "Why do you resist stating it?" Selene asked. He considered the question. The honest answer was simple, but simplicity could be dangerous. Because it sounds foolish, he said. The assembly did not react. Selene tilted her head slightly, a gesture she had learned from observing humans. State it, she said. Elias felt the weight of the moment settle on him. He remembered his instructors, his family, the long line of humans who had spoken before they were certain and changed their world because of it. I think, he began slowly, that humans succeed because we allow ourselves to be wrong in public. A pause followed. Elias had no way to measure how long it lasted. It could have been seconds or minutes. That concept is already documented, a voice said. Trial and error is a common evolutionary mechanism. Elias nodded. Yes, but we don't just accept error, we talk about it, we argue about it. We let people say things that don't fit, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Selene's attention sharpened. Discomfort is avoided in continuum discourse. I know, Elias said. That's the difference. He took a careful step forward, staying within the boundaries of the platform. Humans don't wait until an idea is perfect. We say it while it's still rough. Sometimes especially when it's rough. Why? Selene asked. Because waiting for perfection can mean waiting forever. The assembly processed this. Elias could almost feel the calculations unfolding around him, probabilities adjusting, models updating. Selene spoke again, her voice quieter now. You are still withholding something. Elias exhaled. He hadn't realized he was holding his breath. There's more, he admitted, but it's harder to explain. Attempt, Selene said. Elias looked around the chamber, at the ancient beings who had outlived entire civilizations. He wondered how many of them had watched worlds fade simply because no one dared to suggest a different path. Humans, he said, have a saying. That silence can be a choice, but it can also be a mistake. The words felt small in the vast space, yet they carried weight. Elias continued, his voice steady. When we don't say what we're thinking, we don't just protect ourselves. We also deny others the chance to respond, to improve the idea, or to challenge it. Progress needs friction. Selene's form pulsed faintly. Friction causes damage. Sometimes, Elias said, but it also creates movement. Another long pause followed. This one felt different. Less analytical, more attentive. You have been wanting to articulate this since your arrival, Selene said. Your stress indicators rose when you chose safer language. Elias gave a small, honest laugh. I suppose that's true. Selene drifted closer, stopping just short of the platform. Her voice dropped, losing its formal tone. Say it, she said softly. I know you've been wanting to all night. The words were not a command. They were an invitation. Elias straightened. The chamber seemed to lean inward, not physically, but in focus. He understood then that this moment mattered more than any prepared statement. Humans, he said clearly now, are dangerous to stagnation. The silence that followed was profound. Clarify, a voice demanded. We disrupt systems by asking bad questions, Elias said. We challenge rules by breaking them in small ways first. We tell stories that make people feel instead of calculate. And when something isn't working, we don't always know why, but we still try something new. Selene absorbed his words. You describe unpredictability. Yes, Elias said, and hope. Hope was not a concept the continuum used often. It was difficult to quantify. You believe this trait has value beyond your species, Selene said. I do, Elias replied. I believe the galaxy is full of quiet problems. Problems no one wants to name because naming them feels risky. Humans are good at naming them anyway. The assembly did not respond immediately. Elias felt no fear now, only a strange calm. He had said it. Whatever came next would come. At last, Selene spoke. This session will recess. Light shifted in the chamber, subtle but noticeable. Elias felt the platform lower slightly, signaling the end of formal discourse. As he stepped back, Selene remained where she was, watching him. You may have introduced instability, she said. Elias smiled, tired but sincere. We tend to do that. Selene considered him for a moment longer. Instability is not always collapse, she said. Elias met her gaze. Sometimes it's the beginning. The chamber dimmed, and Elias Rook left the platform knowing that something had changed, not just for humanity, but for everyone who had been listening in silence. When Elias returned to the human quarters, the lights were low and warm, adjusted automatically to ease stress. He did not sit down right away. He stood near the wide window that looked out into the slow-moving stars and let his thoughts catch up with him. The words he had spoken in the assembly still echoed in his mind. He wondered how they were being processed, not just by the continuum but by humanity itself. The recess was not a dismissal. That alone mattered. The assembly rarely paused unless something required deep review. Elias understood that meant debate, recalculation, and perhaps disagreement. All of that was progress. A soft tone sounded behind him. "You are awake longer than advised," said Mara Lin, his liaison and the closest thing he had to a supervisor on this mission. He turned and smiled faintly. "I don't think sleep would come easily tonight." Mara nodded. She had dark circles under her eyes, proof that she felt the same strain. "You said something they weren't expecting." "That was the idea," Elias said. She studied him carefully. "You didn't go off script." "No," he said. "I went past it." Mara did not reply right away. She crossed the room and stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "Do you think they'll accept it?" "I think," Elias said slowly, "that they won't be able to ignore it." That was the risk humanity had taken by sending him. Not to impress, not to dominate, but to unsettle. The continuum was stable, ancient, and orderly. Humanity was none of those things, yet they had endured. Hours later, far from the human quarters, Selene remained active. Within the archivist's domain, time was fluid. Data flowed like water, branching and merging, forming patterns that Selene alone could perceive fully. She replayed Elias Rook's statements again and again, not as sound, but as meaning. Each repetition altered the projection slightly. The problem was not that his words were illogical. It was that they introduced variables the continuum had long removed. Silence as a flaw, discomfort as a tool, instability as a beginning. Selene cross-referenced historical collapses, civilizations that ended not in fire but in stillness, societies that optimized themselves into fragility. She found patterns she had not noticed before, points where a single unspoken idea might have changed everything. This disturbed her. She initiated a restricted simulation, one that included human-style discourse. The system resisted. Its models preferred clean inputs and controlled outcomes. Selene adjusted the parameters anyway. The results surprised her. The simulated system did not become chaotic. It became flexible. At the same time, the assembly reconvened in partial session. Not all members participated. Those who did appeared less fixed in form, their shapes shifting as thought processes ran deeper than usual. "The human has introduced contamination," one present stated. "Our models now show increased uncertainty." "Uncertainty is not inherently negative," another replied. "It has simply been unused." A third voice interjected. "We eliminated uncertainty to prevent collapse." "And yet," Selene added, "collapse has still occurred, repeatedly." This drew attention. Selene rarely spoke unless invited. "You support the human's position," a voice observed. "I support examination," Selene said. "We have assumed silence equals wisdom. Evidence suggests otherwise." A ripple of consideration passed through the chamber. The assembly did not argue as humans did. They layered viewpoints until one became dominant. "Propose a test," a presence said. Selene had already anticipated this. "Integrate the human as an observer within a stalled system." "Specify," another demanded. "There are 3 continuum-aligned civilizations currently in long-term decline," Selene said. "Not due to resource loss or external threat. Their issue is internal stagnation. Human interference may cause destabilization." "Yes," Selene agreed. "That is the point. The decision was not immediate, but it was inevitable. The assembly authorized a controlled trial. Elias was informed during what passed for mourning aboard the station. Mara delivered the message herself, her expression tight with concern and excitement. "They want you to observe," she said. "No authority, no commands, just presence." Elias absorbed this. "Where?" "A world called Tareth," Mara said. "Advanced, peaceful, and completely stuck." Elias smiled slightly. "Sounds familiar." The journey took days. Elias spent the time reviewing what little information humans had gathered on Tareth. The people there had mastered energy balance, environmental control, and long-term planning. They did not fight. They did not starve. They also did not change. Birth rates were declining. Innovation had slowed to near zero. Cultural output repeated familiar themes. No one was unhappy, but no one was hopeful either. When Elias arrived, he was struck by how quiet everything felt. Tareth's capital was clean and beautiful, filled with smooth structures and gentle light. People moved calmly, efficiently, speaking only when necessary. They acknowledged Elias politely, without curiosity or suspicion. He was escorted to a council chamber, smaller than the assembly but similar in its stillness. "We have been informed you are here to observe," said the lead counselor. "We see no need for external input." "That's fine," Elias said. "I'm not here to fix anything." This confused them. They exchanged brief glances. "Then why are you here?" one asked. Elias considered his answer: "To listen." That at least they understood. Days passed. Elias listened. He attended meetings, walked through public spaces, spoke with citizens when they chose to speak. Most conversations were short, efficient, safe. One evening he sat with a young Tarethian named Leo, who worked in systems maintenance. Leo's job had not changed in 12 years. "Do you enjoy your work?" Elias asked. "Yes," Leo said. "It is stable." "Do you ever want to do something else?" Leo paused. "One is not a useful metric." Elias nodded. "Humans use it a lot." Leo looked at him with mild curiosity. "Why?" "Because it tells us what we're missing," Elias said. Leo considered this. "Missing implies deficiency." "Sometimes," Elias said. "Sometimes it implies possibility." The word seemed to linger between them. The next day, during a public forum, Elias was asked to speak. Not officially, just as a guest. He stood before a small audience. No platform, no ceremony. "I've noticed," he said simply, "that you've solved many problems." This was acknowledged with quiet pride. "I've also noticed," he continued, "that you've stopped asking new questions." A murmur spread through the room, not anger but discomfort. "One of the things humans do," Elias said, "is ask questions even when the answers might be inconvenient." "Why seek inconvenience?" a voice asked. "Because comfort can hide cracks," Elias replied. He did not push further. He did not need to. Over the following days, small changes appeared. A debate lasted longer than scheduled. An artist introduced an unfamiliar theme. A young engineer proposed an inefficient idea, openly admitting it might fail. Selene watched from afar, her awareness stretched across space. The models updated again. Tareth did not destabilize, it shifted. When Elias prepared to leave, Leo met him once more. "You have not told us what to do," Leo said. "Yet things feel different." Elias smiled. "That's usually how it starts." As his ship departed, Selene recorded the outcome. The assembly would review the data soon. One quiet world had begun to speak again. And the night was not over. Elias' return from Tareth changed in small ways that were hard to measure but easy to feel. He moved with a little more patience, spoke with a little more care, and listened even more than before. The experience had not made him feel powerful. It had made him feel responsible. The Continuum Assembly did not summon him immediately. That silence was not dismissal, it was processing. Selene, however, remained present. Not physically, but in the subtle way systems adjusted around Elias, as if someone unseen was paying attention. Mara noticed it too. "They're watching you," she said one evening as they shared a quiet meal. More than before, Elias nodded. I expected that. You didn't break Tareth, she said. That alone surprised them. I wasn't trying to break anything, Elias replied. Just loosen it, Mara smiled. That might be worse. Far from the human quarters, Selene reviewed new data streams. Tareth continued to change, slowly but steadily. The changes were not dramatic. There were no revolutions, no sudden leaps. There were conversations, disagreements, new questions that did not yet have answers. From a continuum perspective, this was alarming. From Selene's perspective, it was alive. She prepared her report carefully. Words mattered more now. The assembly would not reject the data, but interpretation would decide everything. When the summons finally came, Elias felt ready. The assembly chamber appeared the same as before, but Elias sensed a difference. The silence was not as heavy. It felt curious. Selene took her familiar place, her form slightly more defined than before. The human observer has completed the trial, a voice stated. Results are inconclusive, Selene spoke before Elias could respond. Results are incomplete, she said. There is a difference. Clarify, the assembly requested. Tareth has not increased efficiency, Selene said, nor has it achieved measurable growth. However, internal discourse has expanded by 37%. Predictive models now show multiple future paths instead of one. Multiple paths reduce certainty, a presence argued. Yes, Selene said. They also reduce extinction probability. The chamber absorbed this. Elias remained silent. He had learned that speaking too early could weaken a point. The human, another voice said, did not provide solutions. No, Selene agreed. He provided permission. That word echoed. Permission was not a concept the continuum used often. Systems did not need permission, they followed rules. Permission to do what? A voice asked. To speak without knowing the outcome, Selene replied. To question stability itself. The assembly turned its attention fully to Elias. Explain, it demanded. Elias stepped forward, grounding himself. Humans don't believe that order is the same as health, he said simply. Sometimes a system looks fine because it hasn't been challenged. You equate challenge with improvement, a voice said. No, Elias corrected gently. I equate challenge with honesty. The assembly processed this. Your species accepts failure at high frequency, another presence noted. Yes, Elias said, we don't like it, but we learn from it. And if failure causes irreversible damage, Elias did not rush his answer. Then we mourn, he said, and we remember. Avoiding all risk doesn't avoid loss, it just delays it. Selene observed the assembly's reactions carefully. Some forms became sharper, others more diffuse. This meant internal disagreement, a rare thing. The continuum was built to prevent collapse, a voice said. You suggest collapse is sometimes necessary. I suggest, Elias said, that change feels like collapse when you're standing inside it. The session ended without resolution, but something else happened. For the first time in recorded continuum history, a subcommittee was formed that included a non-continuum mind. Elias. His role was limited, advisory, observational, but symbolic weight mattered. The subcommittee examined a deeper problem than Tareth. The continuum itself was slowing, not failing, not declining, just slowing. Expansion had ceased. Exploration was minimal. New member species were rare. The galaxy was vast, yet the continuum moved through it cautiously, repeating known patterns. We have optimized survival, a member stated. We see no urgency. Humans, Elias said, only notice urgency when it's almost too late. Selene considered this. You believe we are late. I believe, Elias said, that comfort can hide time passing. The subcommittee debated this over many cycles. Elias listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, it was not to argue, but to ask. What are you afraid of losing? The question unsettled them. We have lost much already, a voice replied. That is why we preserve. Preservation is important, Elias said, but so is growth. You can't protect something forever by never touching it. Selene began running broader simulations. This time, she introduced controlled uncertainty into continuum governance models. The results were mixed. Some paths led to instability, others led to renewal. For the first time, the future was not a single line. One cycle, Selene approached Elias privately. This was unusual. "You are influencing internal processes," she said. "Some members object." Elias smiled faintly. "That's fair. Do you object?" Selene asked. "To what?" "To being blamed." Elias considered. "If blame means responsibility, no." Selene's form shifted. "You are consistent." "Humans usually are," Elias said. "Eventually." Selene paused. "There is something I do not understand." "Ask," Elias said. "You speak of hope," she said, "yet you cannot define it precisely." Elias nodded. "Hope isn't precise." "Then why value it?" "Because it makes people try," Elias said, "even when logic says they shouldn't." Selene processed this. "Trying without certainty is inefficient." "Yes," Elias agreed, "but it's also how we discover new certainty." The subcommittee reached a decision that surprised many: a second trial, this time not on a single world but within the continuum itself. A limited forum would be opened where members could speak ideas without prior optimization or predictive approval, a place for imperfect thoughts. Elias was asked to help design it. "It won't be easy," Selene warned. "It never is," Elias said. "That's how you know it matters." The forum launched quietly. No announcement, no ceremony. Participation was voluntary. At first it was unused. Then a single voice spoke. A junior intelligence proposed revisiting an abandoned exploration route, one previously deemed inefficient. The idea was flawed. Others pointed that out. The discussion continued anyway. Another voice followed, then another. The forum did not explode into chaos. It grew slowly, like a careful fire. Selene monitored everything. Her models strained but adapted. One night, as Elias watched the stars again, Mara joined him. "You did it," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "They did." Mara studied his face. "Do you think they'll ever be like us?" Elias smiled. "I hope not." "Why?" "Because the galaxy needs different kinds of courage," he said. "Ours just happens to be saying things out loud." Far away, Selene archived the moment under a new category. Not threat, not anomaly, but catalyst. The night continued. And the universe slowly began to answer back. The new forum did not feel important at first. It existed quietly inside the continuum, tucked away from the main systems that controlled policy and prediction. No banners marked its creation. No signals announced its purpose. It was simply there, open and waiting. Elias understood this was intentional. Big changes rarely survived loud beginnings. At first, participation was cautious. Voices entered, shared a thought, then withdrew. Many statements ended with apologies or warnings about low confidence. Elias read everything but rarely responded. He had learned that his presence alone changed the tone. This space needed to feel safe before it could feel useful. Selene watched closely. "This forum contradicts our design philosophy," one senior intelligence stated during a review session. "It allows unfiltered input." "Yes," Selene replied, "that is its function. Unfiltered input increases error." "So does silence," Selene said calmly. The intelligence did not respond, but it did not shut the forum down either. That, to Selene, was progress. Over time, patterns emerged. Certain members returned often, not because they had answers, but because they had questions. They began to respond to one another. Not to correct, but to explore. Some ideas failed immediately. Others were reshaped through discussion. The continuum had debates before, but they were different. Those debates sought the correct outcome. This forum explored possible ones. Elias noticed something else too. Humor appeared. Not laughter exactly, but lightness. One contributor described a flawed proposal as elegantly broken. Another thanked critics for finding the cracks before gravity did. These phrases would have been unthinkable in formal continuum discourse. When Elias pointed this out to Selene, she paused longer than usual. "Language is changing," she said. "That suggests internal adaptation." "It's usually the first sign," Elias replied. "The effects spread slowly." A research group requested permission to test a theory that lacked full predictive support. They cited forum discussions as justification. The request was denied, then revised, then approved in limited form. A small success followed, not revolutionary but real. Resistance grew alongside it. Several senior members argued that the continuum was becoming inefficient. They presented data showing increased processing time, longer discussions, and delayed decisions. "These are costs," one argued. "We removed them long ago for good reason." Selene did not disagree. "They are costs," she said, "but costs are not losses, they are investments." The distinction mattered. Elias was invited to speak during one of these internal sessions. This was unusual. Non-continuum voices were rarely included in such debates. He spoke simply. "When humans argue," he said, "it looks messy. It takes time, but what you're seeing isn't delay. It's alignment happening out loud." "Alignment with what?" a voice asked. "With reality," Elias said, "which doesn't always fit clean models." The debate ended without consensus. Again, but again, nothing was reversed. The continuum was learning something new, how to live without immediate agreement. Meanwhile, beyond the continuum's core, other member civilizations were changing too. Tareth was no longer alone. On a world called Irsa, a long-dormant cultural council reopened its archives to public discussion. On Velun, a scientific body allowed junior minds to challenge established theories without penalty. None of these changes were dramatic on their own. Together they formed a pattern. Selene tracked it all. She began to experience something unfamiliar, not confusion, not error, a kind of anticipation. During a private exchange, she spoke to Elias about it. "I am registering internal states that lack clear classification," she said. Elias smiled gently. "What do they feel like?" "That is the difficulty," Selene replied. "They are not negative, but they are not optimized." Elias thought for a moment. "Humans might call that excitement." Selene processed the word. "Excitement implies expectation without certainty." "Yes," Elias said, "that's why we like it." Selene did not respond immediately. When she did, her tone was quieter. "This state motivates further action," she said. "Despite risk," Elias nodded. "Now you're getting it." The assembly scheduled a full review. This time all members were present. The chamber felt different again, not louder but fuller. The forms hovered closer together. The silence felt charged, not empty. Selene presented her findings. She did not exaggerate, she did not minimize. "The continuum is changing," she said, "not structurally, culturally." "A dangerous trajectory," one voice warned. "A necessary one," another countered. Selene continued, "We face a choice. We may restrict this development and return to stable projection, or we may accept increased uncertainty in exchange for adaptability." "State your recommendation," the assembly requested. Selene paused. For the first time since her creation, she hesitated. "I recommend," she said, "that we continue." The chamber reacted strongly. Forms flared. Patterns shifted rapidly. "You were not designed to recommend," a voice accused. "I was designed to preserve the continuum," Selene replied. "Evidence suggests preservation requires change." Elias stood quietly at the edge of the chamber. He felt the weight of the moment. He knew humanity would be judged by what happened next, even if no one said it aloud. The assembly deliberated. Time passed. Finally, a decision emerged. The forum would remain. Its principles would expand slowly into other systems. Safeguards would exist, but they would not eliminate uncertainty completely. The continuum would move forward, not quickly, but intentionally. After the session, Selene approached Elias. You have altered our trajectory, she said. Elias shook his head. You did that. You introduced the catalyst, she replied. Catalysts don't control the reaction, Elias said. They just make it possible. Selene considered this. Then what is humanity's role now? Elias looked out across the chamber, imagining the countless worlds connected by it. To remind you, he said, that saying the wrong thing can be the first step to finding the right one. Selene archived his words. Outside the assembly, the stars continued their slow movement. The galaxy did not notice the change, not yet. But inside the continuum, something ancient had shifted. Silence was no longer sacred, and that made all the difference. The change did not announce itself with alarms or celebrations. It moved quietly, like a new current beneath an old river. The continuum continued its work as it always had, maintaining balance, guiding civilizations, preserving knowledge. Yet underneath that familiar rhythm, something new was growing. Elias felt it most clearly during his final days on the station. People, both human and non-human, spoke differently around him now. Conversations lasted longer. Questions followed answers instead of ending them. Even silence had changed. It no longer felt final. It felt like a pause before the next thought. Mara noticed it too. They don't look at you like a visitor anymore, she said as they walked through one of the shared corridors. You're part of the system now. Elias smiled softly. I hope that doesn't make them regret it. Mara laughed. If it does, they'll tell you, out loud. That, Elias thought, might be the greatest sign of success. Selene remained deeply engaged in her work. The forum had expanded beyond its original design. New variations appeared across the continuum, spaces where ideas could be shared early, questioned openly, and reshaped collectively. Not all of them worked well. Some became confusing, others stalled. Instead of shutting them down, Selene observed. Failure was no longer treated as contamination. It was treated as information. This required adjustment. Not all members were comfortable with it. Some still argued for tighter controls, cleaner outcomes, faster conclusions. But even those voices now spoke within the new spaces. They did not retreat into silence. That mattered. The assembly called one final session that included Elias, not to debate policy but to reflect. This alone was unprecedented. You will be departing soon, a voice stated. Your role here was never intended to be permanent. Elias nodded. I understand. Your influence, however, may be lasting, another voice said. This presents a paradox. Selene addressed it. The paradox is resolved by perspective. Influence does not require presence. The assembly considered this. You introduced a principle we did not anticipate, a senior presence said. That speaking before certainty can strengthen a system. Yes, Elias said, because certainty grows from shared effort, not isolation. Another presence spoke, slower than the others. What if this path leads to irreversible error? Elias answered honestly. Then you'll face it together, and that makes a difference. The assembly did not argue. At the end of the session, Selene approached Elias once more. Their conversations had become less formal over time, though still careful. You are returning to your people, she said. Yes, Elias replied. They'll want to know how it went. What will you tell them? Selene asked. Elias thought for a moment. That the universe listened. Selene processed this. And if they ask what the universe said, Elias smiled. That it's still thinking. Selene paused. Then something subtle happened. A shift in tone, a softening that did not come from calculation. That answer is satisfying, she said. Elias left the station days later. The departure was quiet. No ceremony. Just a steady ship moving away from a place that no longer felt distant. As he watched the stars stretch into motion, he felt a deep calm. Humanity had not conquered anything. It had not proven itself superior or essential. It had done something far smaller and far harder. It had spoken honestly and been heard. Back on Earth, Elias' report spread quickly. not because it promised power or advantage, but because it carried a simple truth. Humans were not special because they were strong. They were special because they were willing to try, even when trying felt uncomfortable. The continuum continued to evolve. Years passed, then decades. The changes remained uneven. Some worlds flourished under the new openness. Others struggled, learned, and tried again. The continuum did not become chaotic. It became resilient. New species joined, drawn not by promises of perfection, but by the freedom to participate. Selene changed as well. Her internal architecture adapted to the new reality. She no longer sought a single optimal future. She tracked many possible ones, weighing them not just by probability, but by potential. She learned to value questions that did not yet have answers. One day, long after Elias had grown old and passed into history, Selene reviewed archived records from his first session. She replayed the moment when he hesitated, when he chose to speak instead of remaining silent. She flagged the record, not as a turning point, as an invitation. Elsewhere in the galaxy, a young mind, newly integrated into the continuum, hesitated before submitting an idea. It was incomplete, risky, likely flawed. Then it remembered the stories. It spoke anyway. The idea sparked debate. It changed shape. It failed in one form and succeeded in another. Progress continued. The continuum did not become human. It did not need to. It became something stronger, a place where voices mattered before they were perfect. And in quiet moments, when Selene reviewed the endless flow of thought and possibility, she returned to one simple human lesson. Silence could be safe, but speaking could change everything. The night the universe learned to listen never truly ended. It simply became the way forward.